All right, y'all. So now we're at the wars. We've seen kind of how everything's going, and now we're going to look at the first war. And weirdly, Dr. Spivogel calls it the First War. So if that's what you have in your power map, let's go ahead and call that the War of Devolution. And I like that war because the alliances devolved, chaos ensued. And what happened here? Well, Louis XIV, being young, arrogant, brash, he doesn't understand what's happening. So he invaded the Spanish Netherlands. Why did he invade the Spanish Netherlands? Because he was embittered that the dowry that was given to him by marrying that Spanish princess was supposed to be key lands in the Netherlands. Well, Spain reneged on that. They didn't give it to him. So he's like, screw it. And for some reason, he believed all of Europe would be celebrating because who had been the enemy for so long? The Habsburgs, right? So therefore, by him invading the Spanish Netherlands, he truly seems to believe that nothing's going to happen to him. Unfortunately for him, this snaps into what we call the Triple Alliance. What was the Triple Alliance? Well, the Netherlands, scared of what's going to happen, the Dutch eventually negotiate with England and the Swedish and form this Triple Alliance to check the power of Louis XIV. And Louis XIV is shocked. He's like, wait a minute. Why are y'all turning it against me? And that led to an immediate treaty, almost immediate, called the Peace of Aix-la-Chapelle. And here we see a map of Peace of Aix-la-Chapelle. And when I think about this peace, it's really important because this is a type of appeasement. The Peace of Aix-la-Chapelle rewarded it's going to reward Louis with some Flemish lands. So do you see these lands right here? They're going to be given to Louis XIV. And the hope was that if he gets these lands that he's fighting for, then he'll be satisfied. This is appeasement. And what happens when you appease bad behavior? Well, Louis XIV, he's embittered with the Dutch. He's embittered with the people. And he's like, why is this happening to me? Yes, I don't just deserve the lands that they gave me. I deserve more. So now he's empowered and he begins to rethink, what am I going to do? And what happens? This is going to lead us to the next war, the Dutch War. And this Dutch War is a really short war. It is in really 1 year, 1670, so really close. But what we see here, what caused the Dutch War? I'm going to argue it's the Treaty of Dover. So the Treaty of Dover, when we think about the Treaty of Dover, it was a treaty between England and France. And remember, England and France, if you remember England and France, this is during the Restoration. So Charles II had just returned. He'd been protected, right? He'd been protected by Louis XIV in Versailles, and now he's like, "Hey, why don't we negotiate a treaty?" And it's a secret treaty in some ways, but in 1670, we have this agreement between France and England that said we're going to team up against the Dutch. So England is going to allow France to invade the Netherlands while the English have another Anglo-Dutch trade war. You got to feel sorry. You got to feel bad, right, for the Dutch. This is such a sad moment because the Dutch were immediately overwhelmed. The naval war with England, they're going to lose their key colonies. This is when New Amsterdam becomes New York. We talked about that a little bit. So they're going to lose key colonies to England. Then they're going to be completely destroyed. The French army cannot be stopped. What's the only way they're going to get France out? And it's when William unplugged the dikes. The Netherlands are surrounded by a series of seawalls that we call dikes. And what happens here, he's like, oh, I can't stop him. So by unplugging the dike, he's going to strategically flood certain areas where the French armies are, forcing them to retreat. So no matter how many times the French win battles, they can never claim land. And that brings an end to this war as Dutch completely side with England. They say, hey, England, take what you got. But France could never truly secure their victory. So the Dutch, when it comes to it, kind of in the end, the English are in a good position of power. France is still frantic. And Louis XIV really hated the Dutch. He believed that the Dutch were the reason why the War of Devolution ended the way it did. He blames the Dutch. He wants to destroy the Dutch. But the Dutch are able to at least hold off this element. Well, that's going to lead us to another war. And this is called the War of the League of Augsburg. And this war, I always remember, starts in 1689 because it's actually caused by the Glorious Revolution. So, what is the League of Augsburg? Well, sometimes we call this the War of the 9 Years' War. I don't call it that. I think the AP might. So we may put that in your mindset, 9 Years' War. But what caused this war? Well, William and Mary became joint monarchs of England. And what happened to the Treaty of Dover? Do you think William's going to be like, yay, let's keep the Treaty of Dover? Of course not. He rips that jank apart. He's like, no, for me to be king, we must have an Anglo-Dutch alliance. And with William ending the Treaty of Dover, immediately this creates the element for this war. And actually, Louis XIV, he's going to be he felt triangulated because the League of Augsburg was an alliance led by England and the Netherlands, along with some other countries that united against Louis XIV. So this is why Louis XIV says, screw this. He wants to send one of the stewards, and I believe it's Charles the Pretender here, and he tries to invade England through there. So sometimes this might be called the War of English Succession. Really doesn't particularly matter. It was actually James the Pretender. But it doesn't really matter. But I just want to point out the political here. The Glorious Revolution created the immediate atmosphere for this war as the Treaty of Dover is gone, and the League of Augsburg's formed, Louis XIV's triangulated, so he went on the offensive. He wanted to focus on, if he invaded the Netherlands again, maybe he can win. Well, unfortunately, by the end of this war, there is no clear victor. There is no winner. The balance of power has not quite been solved. So that's where we're seeing this element, we're seeing this development happen. And that's going to bring us to an end to our lecture on this part. So we've covered 3 wars, the 3 wars of the War of Devolution, the Dutch War, and the War of League of Augsburg. We now see that Louis XIV is flustered, not defeated, and he really wants something. So we're going to see that despite this 9 years war into the 1690s, everybody's exhausted, but nothing is solved. I hope that makes sense. Let me pause and then we'll finish this up with the last war.